Hi, hello, and welcome to the 10th episode of the Stage Manager Supply Co. podcast. We have no sponsor this episode, but instead are brought to you by Spell Check. Spell Check! Yes, I do mean theater with an R-E. My name is Claire, I'm your host, and thank you for joining me today. As we start every podcast, I would first like to say that Black Lives Matter, and that I am creating this content on the traditional lands of the Kickapoo, Peoria, Potawatomi, Miami, and Sioux tribes. We always start the podcast acknowledging the inequitable landscape and history of the United States, including but never limited to the fact that we are a country built on stolen land and developed on the backs of slaves. Stage Manager Supply Co. is my own attempt to bridge generations of systematic racism and oppression by making stage management arts education much more accessible. Today, I would like to highlight God's Love We Deliver. God's Love We Deliver cooks and home delivers nutritious, medically tailored meals for people too sick to shop or cook for themselves. To support the health of their clients, they also provide ongoing nutrition assessment, education, and counseling. God's Love is a non-sectarian organization serving people in need and their children and caregivers. All of their services are provided free to clients and full of love. If you would like to learn more about God's Love We Deliver and donate what you are able, you can find the link to their website in the episode description. 2 disclaimers before I introduce today's guest. Disclaimer number 1. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and the guest, and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, production, organization, employer, or company. Disclaimer number 2. The host does not presume to be any sort of singular voice for stage management or stage managers. The views and opinions expressed by the host are extremely limited to the scope of her own experiences and are being widened each and every day. So, now that we've grounded our work in the reality of the world around us, let me introduce you to our guest. Our guest today is Matthew Melchiorre. Matthew is a stage manager based out of New York City and a graduate of Fordham University. He has worked on Broadway on The Light in the Piazza, Coram Boy, Hamlet with Jude Law, Monty Python's Spamalot, The Lion King, Curtains, Wicked, and A Tale of Two Cities. He has extensive credits off-Broadway as well with primary stages, including A.R. Gurney's Black Tie, Happy Now, Shipwrecked and Entertainment, A.R. Gurney's Buffalo Gal, and many more. Regionally, he has worked on over 25 productions at Westport Country Playhouse, including as the resident production stage manager, as well as working at Hartford Stage, Long Wharf Theater, Baltimore Center Stage, Two River Theater Company, La Jolla Playhouse, and Paper Mill Playhouse. Matthew is also an arts educator, which we stan, teaching at Rutgers and the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. The latter being where I met Matthew and gave him the immense pleasure of being my professor and mentor for most of my college career and thereafter. Matthew, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Claire. Thank you. It's so nice to allow a shy introvert to come and do your podcast with you.
Oh, I'm so excited. I was thinking before we got on, I was like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm going to Matthew's office for another Come to Jesus meeting. So I'm glad everyone gets to, witness this and
what I do for a living.
Exactly. The benefits of being under Matthew's tutelage. So I want to start, as I've been asking everyone, and just ask, how are you holding up during quarantine and how are you doing?
I'm good. Quarantine is an interesting time for, myself and for everyone. There's good days, there's bad days. I'm getting a lot of reading done, which is nice. My stack of books that have been, by my bedside has slowly dwindled, but now has actually creeped back up with more books that I bought.
Oh.
So, yeah. So, but it's been good in the sense that, I've had time. I think this is the most downtime that I've ever had in my career. So it's been nice to take a breath, sit and weigh, options and just, figure out what day to day is. I keep a schedule as best I can, but if there's a day where I don't feel like doing anything, I don't do anything. So I'm not going to fight it. So
yeah, what a beautiful privilege that we can just hang out.
Knock on wood, I'm healthy.
Yeah.
it's a hard time for a lot of people, and but I think we wake up and every day and just hopefully, are healthy. So same here.
Keeping those good vibes going. I want to
Hmm.
ask about your journey to stage management. Where did it begin? Was it stage management for the get-go? And how did you get interested in theater?
Oh, I was born with a headset on. So no. Actually it wasn't stage management technically for the get-go. I grew up, in a suburb of New York City, about 20 minutes outside of New York City in New Jersey, and I was always taken to see shows. I think I saw my first show when I was 5 years old. I think I wrote my college essay on that as well. But the other jobs that as I was preparing for this podcast, I think the other jobs that I was thinking about were I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to be a hotel manager. I
Oh.
want I just wanted to live in hotels. So I wanted to be president of the United States, although
Of course.
now so
Who's doesn't?
exactly. But I was in middle school, I was in AV club and stage crew a lot. And then when I moved over into high school, I actually started taking a lot of courses in TV. And we actually had our local access channel based out of our high school. And so I thought that was the direction I was going to go. I was going to eventually become a TV producer. And then my junior year, friends of mine were like, come do the all school production with us. And I'm like, oh, what do I do? I'm not an actor. I don't ever want to be an actor. I'm shy, as I've mentioned before. So I'm not a spotlight person at all. So they're like, well, you can be the stage manager. I was like, well, what do I do? And I'm sure you've heard this a lot. But they really took me by the hand and showed me what I had to do. And that first production, I think, was Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
I have such a soft spot in my heart for every one of those colors.
Good for
Every
you.
single one.
Good for you. And I enjoyed it. And from that, I had to join the drama club. But the
Course.
drama club was associated with Paper Mill, which has an education department that has the Rising Star program, or at least did back then. And so what the Rising Star program would do would take our drama club, and we would go see shows at Paper Mill in New Jersey. And they would do like a seminar with us before the show, like based on like costume design, what we were going to see on the stage that day, or we would do a backstage tour and things like that. So continuing on that path, I did my senior year, I did the all school production again, West Side Story. And see, I know they're good stuff. But and that year, I was actually, Paper Mill has a Rising Star Awards, which is basically like a Tony Awards for high school productions.
Oh yeah,
I
they're
was,
cutthroat.
yeah, I know. I was nominated for stage management.
Oh.
I know. And so when that happened, I was like, oh, well, maybe this is the path that I should follow. And so that's how it started. Then I was like, well, then I broke the news to my parents I was going to go into the arts. And we were gung-ho on trying to find the right college and just make sure that that was the right path for me. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and so you have ended up going to Fordham,
I
and
did.
what about Fordham called to you, and why did you choose that program?
Location. So no, yes and no. So
Sure.
Fordham has a very small program, and that's what I was looking for. I did know that if I was going to try this full time and full steam ahead, I was going to do this in New York. When I was looking at schools at Fordham, I looked at Fordham and I looked at Marymount Manhattan, because they were small. And I knew, and that's where I came from. I came from a small drama club that, and I chose Fordham because its campus was at Lincoln Center. So on the west side, 4 blocks from Broadway, why not? But they also gave me um, the the education I was looking for. I was looking for a little bit more broad-based. Fordham has one class in stage management in 4 years, one class for one semester. So the rest of your classes are actually production classes. So my track was the production track. So I took costume design, set design, lighting tech, costume tech, drafting, all those other courses. So Fordham, my professors at Fordham knew that I wanted to be a stage manager. And I was, I think, only one of 3 at the time that were actually trying to focus on stage management too. So they would kind of focus the lesson for me on how would a stage manager use a ground plan? How would a stage manager use a light plot?
Nice.
Like, what does a stage manager need to use costume designs for? And so what that gave me was this great foundation for the business and how to interact with all the other departments, which was so beneficial to my stage management as I left Fordham.
Yeah, such a good vocabulary training very
Absolutely.
early on. Yeah.
Yeah.
At your time at Fordham, who and probably in your early career in New York, who kind of emerged then as your early mentors? Who were people that kind of gave you your first start in New York, and how did you go about making these connections?
It's funny because I will always talk about mentors and say that I am the product of everybody I've ever worked with, and I think a lot of us feel that way. We grab from the good stage managers, we certainly learn from the bad stage managers. And but it's not just stage managers, it's actors, it's directors, it's designers, it's crew, it's everybody, has informed how I've worked to get me to this point now in my career. But if you want some names,
Yes, please give some shout outs.
So my teacher was Roy Harris, who had a long career at Manhattan Theater Club and working with Dan Sullivan on all of Wendy Wasserstein's plays on Broadway. So and he and I have had, kept up a lot through the time at Fordham and even afterwards. Richard Hester was like one of my first stage managers to work with. Tom Widman, always gave me such confidence and trust in me. Kim Vernace and Paul Smith, those really, I started doing big shows when I was really young, and those were the stage managers that I worked with. Frank Lombardi, Diane DeVita, but even people like, Mark Lamos, who's a director that I work with, who when I really started becoming a PSM was the director that I worked with, and he just trusted me so much and I really got to figure out my style of production stage management through working with him. Victoria Clark, the actress on Late in the Piazza, who now has been a director I've worked with too. She just makes it seem like, the friends that you make in this business, when she describes it as, we throw each other Hail Marys all the time and you're the one that always catches it. And, vice versa with her too. If she calls up, I answer and we just do it. But even like my contemporaries are my mentors. Jonathan Bach is a mentor that's been really trying to teach me about the work-life balance, because I can be a workaholic and he's not that, and he's perfect at not being that. And a stage manager that I work with a lot, Christine Demore, is such a mentor to me. She's really taught me how to be a friend and be a support in this business, and no matter what, she's there and I'm there for her, and vice versa. And that just, it's something that you don't always get in this business, finding that really, really true friend. and she's it. So
Yeah, that's
I've
so
I've had a
beautiful.
good run. I've had a good run.
Yeah, well, and I love there's two things I love from what you said is that mentors aren't just people that you meet that are older than you.
Mhm.
Mentors are people that you can meet at any point in your career, and they can be anyone, not just the person who's in the field that you're trying to do. And the second thing that I love that you said, and something that when I think of Matthew, I think of this phrase of your stage management style. That is
Mhm.
something you so heavily imparted on me in college, and I'm so thankful for it. I want to ask, what does that phrase mean to you? What is your stage management style?
Uh, my stage management style, comes from the person, and the tricky thing about trying to teach style is that is about the person. So I can't teach you, like, I can't take a mold and make my style and sell it to you. It's going to be different when you do it. And I think we talked a lot about that when you were in school too, that I can show you my way of doing it, but is
Yeah,
that going to work for you? Maybe, maybe not. The circumstances are going to be different. Who's yelling at you is going to be completely different.
very true.
It's just exactly, it's just so it takes trial and error
Yeah,
to really try to figure out your style. And the style also changes from show to show too. I mentioned Mark Lamos before. He's a very comfortable director that lets the stage manager run the room. Then there's other directors who don't, and you have to learn how to be adaptable. I can't go in and impart my style on somebody, and that's so so when I think about style, I really do like to just say it's what you make of it. This job really is all about your personality, and and then a little bit your skills. But if you don't have the personality, the temperament, and all of that, then it's not, it's going to be hard to find a career in this business.
yeah. Oh, that's Matthew. If I could put all of that on a pillow, I feel like in so much of fans of Stage Manager Supply Co. will know that like so much of what I say in my instructional videos is like, so this is how I press the buttons on a computer document to make this document. And this is
Mhm.
generally what works for me, but I don't use it every time. And you shouldn't use it every time.
Yeah.
The style is the fluidity and the being able to understand what the needs of the room and the people are.
Hmm.
So that's what I've learned from Matthew. So that's why you keep
Yeah.
hearing it from me.
Oh.
Um, what were your early days in New York like? What were shows that you were working on early in your career? And then what kind of bigger opportunities did those shows lead into?
It's interesting. My early days in New York City were very, very focused on working and very, very focused on working in the theater.
Yeah.
If you actually look at my transcript from Fordham, you just see the grades go. So, and I was realized, that's it. I didn't, I was so focused on being in the community and being in the business, you know, um, and I wanted to learn and absorb as much as I could. So, back before the internet. I
What time was
know.
that?
Yes, it was 19 minutes. No. um, I wrote letters to stage managers. I wrote, letters just saying like, "Hi, my name is Matthew. I'm a young stage manager. I would love to just talk to you." And I would drop them off the stage door, and sometimes they would get answered, sometimes they wouldn't. I've gotten as a stage manager working on Broadway, I've gotten those letters too. Sometimes I answer them, sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
So a letter reached the production manager's desk at Manhattan Theater Club,
Hmm.
and they called me on my during my freshman year
Hmm.
and asked me to come in for an interview to be a production assistant on a show. Um, so I went in. I remember I got dressed up in a suit.
Oh
for
my
this interview.
gosh.
I didn't know that theater, professionals were a little more casual than I was at the time. But they interviewed me, and it just so happened that the show was perfectly slotted to start right before to start tech right before I left or I ended the semester in college, and it took me through the whole summer.
Nice.
So I got the job. I don't remember what I said to get in that interview. I don't remember what was talked about. But I remember now going to this show at Manhattan Theater Club, being a production assistant on an
Wow.
off-Broadway show. It was actually when Manhattan Theater Club did not have the Broadway space yet.
Oh, wow. 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 Wow.
Yeah,
That's cool.
the basement of City Center is where I started my career.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's for you very poetic.
it is, and it gets a little bit more poetic if we talk about Encores at some point.
Yes,
But,
we will. We will.
Okay, all right. So I'm doing this show, and I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying it, but it so happens that now Manhattan Theater Club had that same slot open every summer.
Oh,
So
wow.
every summer, I would go back to Manhattan Theater Club. They would call me like, "We liked you. Do you want to do another show with us?" And I did about 6 shows with them. I did one
Wow.
during a semester too. I was a sub on another one, so that's how my career started. And that's where I met Richard Hester. And I met I met Megan Schneid doing a show with her. So my network started to expand really a lot. And, just to be an observer in those rooms with all those professional stage managers was just, so much better than, just sitting in class trying to learn that stuff. And I would actually take a lot of what I learned back into productions that I would do at Fordham. So I kind of did this reverse school thing. And then, then I did shows at Roundabout as well as a production assistant. And so my resume just kept expanding. And then, like, right as I was about to graduate Fordham, I got a call from Paper Mill. I think I was still sending out letters at the time. And I got a call from Paper Mill. They were looking for a production assistant for their production of King and I. And and I got it, and it started like in April. So I was actually going to class, and then going to the show at night, and trying to balance it all together. And but then they asked me to do another show, the next show after that, and then I did the whole season after that. And and that got me 52 weeks out of EMC credits, equity membership candidate credits. And I got my equity card through Paper Mill. So, and that's where I felt I was ready to take my equity card. I'd gotten an offer to get it like 2 other times, I think, one to be, but I wasn't ready. And, but with Paper Mill, I was working with a full union crew. I was working with automation. I was doing big musicals, which is what I wanted to do at the time. So I felt like to launch, that would be the right way, that I was comfortable doing big musicals. And so getting my card through that was, extremely helpful.
I think you're the first person who I've spoke to on the podcast who got their card through the EMC program, which is so great to hear that someone like you, who's had this long, varied career, has gotten it. I mean, you did get offers, yes, but, going through that program, that's really heartening to hear for people who may be going through that program out in the regions, or, not in a situation where you're going to school at Fordham,
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting too, because you as a professional, and then when you teach too, and you sit on a lot of like question and answer moments, and you get a lot from younger stage managers like, when should I get my card? And it has to be right. My stock answer is, it has to be right for you. I can't, being the ASM slash understudy on Naked Boy Singing was not the right time for me to get my equity card, and nor would I think my mother feel the same way. So, but but Paper Mill gave me the sense and the confidence about saying this was the right time.
Yeah.
This was the right moment for me. So.
Yeah. The
Yes.
next question I kind of wanted to ask you was about a show that I learned a lot about you from. I had no idea about before, but at the time was a huge hit in New York, Light in the Piazza. When did you join the process? What was your role in the show? What were challenges? What were the highs? What were the lows? Tell me everything. And what is it like being part of a long run and an acclaimed run?
Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you not just a little bit about Light in the Piazza. I can tell you a lot about Light in the Piazza.
All of
It's
it.
just, it's, I would hope that everybody in this business has an experience like I had on Light in the Piazza. I think from start to finish, it's the thing that I can remember the most clear. You know, you've rattled off in the opening, you know, about 50 shows that I've worked on. And it's the clearest one that I can tell you almost daily what we did. It was just that much of an experience that was truly a passion project for all of us that worked on it. I started on the show when it came to Broadway. It had 2 productions beforehand. It had an initial run at the Intiman Theater in Seattle, and then it went and moved with a new director, Bart Scher, to the Goodman in Chicago. So
I've heard of it.
I'm surprised you didn't go see it then, but you probably weren't even born.
Who's to say?
That's true. But my friend Tom Woodman called me up. He was the production stage manager. Tom and I had worked together on The Frogs. I have to mention that for I know somebody who might be watching. But I did The Frogs in 2004 with Tom, and he called me up and he said, "So, do you want to work on this little chamber musical called called The Light in the Piazza? It's back at Lincoln Center." And he goes, "I can't offer you an ASM position because it's LORT. We're only going to do the scenario of PSM 1 ASM. But you as the PA will stay on for the run of the show." And because it was LORT, it was only running for about like 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And I said, sure. But Tom, Claudia Lynch, who was the ASM, and myself were the stage manager team. We had 2 other PAs, Andy Einhorn, who was a music PA, who worked closely with more with Adam Gettle, and Ted Sperling, the musical director, and then Melanie Morgan was another PA of ours. So we did our rehearsal process. We did tech. Claudia and I created the deck tracks. I was in the trap a lot, so a lot of time sitting in that trap with Howie the Carpenter. And yeah, and it was great. And then I remember the Friday before opening, I was in Macy's buying some clothes for opening night, and my phone rings, and it's the general management team asking if I would like to be bumped up to an assistant stage manager. And I said, absolutely.
Yes, please.
And exactly. And I remember walking in into the office that day, and right around like 6 o'clock, and I just put my things out and I went away. I did some other things, and then Tom's there, and he sits, and and I sit at my desk, and Tom's at his desk, and goes, "So, get any phone calls today?" So, he had worked it. Vicky was a kind of a champ all through rehearsal. I remember her saying that, she goes, we should bump him up. And
yes.
So,
yes.
It was just kind of, and that was it. Challenges of it, there's challenges to doing a long run. But the challenges of this show, was how delicate it was. It's an emotional show. It's very specific. There isn't a whole lot of spectacle to it. So all the light cues and all the scenery shifts are really specific. So there was a lot of time during tech just trying to get it right,
Yeah.
because we knew we had to get it right or it just wouldn't work. Highlights are just everything, honestly.
Everything. Yeah.
It's just, I can think about the people so vividly. The crew was amazing. That crew at the Beaumont is just amazing. um they're supportive. They are really fun to work with. They're passionate about the show that comes in. They're really part of the team. The ushers too, I had a great time talking to the ushers all the time. And it was the first
Can
show
we
that,
pause
yeah.
on the ushers? I
Yes.
was told by a little birdie that
Hmm.
your father was possibly an usher at the Beaumont at the time of Light in the Piazza. Can you confirm or
Yes,
deny?
I can
Yes.
confirm. My father was a supervisor of in-flight services for United
Mhm.
Airlines for a really long time. And when he decided to retire, he wanted a job that was kind of very low key, and he liked going to the theater. So he became a Broadway usher.
Wow.
And there have been times where we have been on the same show together.
Oh, so
Piazza
cool.
was one of them. I think Lion King was another one. But he's been a champion. He would talk to stage managers when he was at the Richard. His kind of main two theaters were the Richard Rodgers and the Minskoff, and now he's slowly dwindled to a little bit more retirement.
Nice.
But even at the Rogers, he would talk to the stage managers, be like, "My son's a stage manager too," and like he would be like an agent. So
Yeah. Oh.
and then they would call me and they're like, "We talked to your father about you. Would you want to come in and like have a coffee with us?" I'm like, sure,
Okay. Thanks,
sure,
Dad.
sign me up."
That is such a great, it's so pure. Are there any other Light in the Piazza tidbits? I know I cut you off with the Usher story, but it
Oh
ran.
God. Highlight. I got to call it too. I was put in the rotation of calling a show. I'm calling a show at 24 years old.
Yeah.
So that was exciting. That first moment where you throw cue lights, I wanted to vomit. Oh my God, this
Oh,
shit's moving.
oh, it's happening. It's happening.
It's happening. Oh my God, it's right. So,
I can't stop.
oh my gosh. The first night I called the show,
Mhm.
I didn't really want to know, and I was a little bit I
Yeah.
didn't want to know who was in the audience, if Bart
No.
was in the audience, or if anybody creative was in the audience. So I didn't. And Tom gave me a few notes afterwards, and then all of a sudden the door to the booth, we called from the front of house,
Okay.
and the door from the booth opens up, and there's Chris Ackerland, the lighting designer. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I mess
Cool.
up? He's going to give me a long list of notes. And he
Yeah.
goes, nope. He goes, very good. And then he left. So
Yes.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
that is so affirming
So
for.
that was a huge, like, that's anything better than like anyone could ever give me notes. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that moment must have felt amazing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
wow. Okay. Well, I could talk to you, and I feel like you could too about this show for
Oh
hours
yeah.
and
Oh,
days, but
absolutely. Yeah.
there are so
There's
many
more
more
to talk about.
yeah, there's so many more things I want to ask you about though. You were a sub on the Lion King Broadway tour, and
Mhm.
on the Lion King Broadway and on the tour.
Yep.
And then you also tour as the assistant tour manager with the Steve Martin and Martin Short tour
Yes.
that you've been doing on and off throughout teaching, which I was always so impressed with. If you'd be like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm out of town these 2 days, I have to go work with Steve and Marty. And I'd be like, oh, yes, casual. Um, how with these two experiences, how do they kind of flex your stage management muscles in different ways?
The subbing part of the show, of the job, real subbing really flexed my muscles. And I subbed, everything after Cornboy in the intro you read. What that was a Broadway show from the Spamalot or Lion King through Tale of Two Cities was sub work. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've subbed on a majority of a lot of shows, sometimes all at the same time too.
Yeah.
Um, so it flexes your muscles in the fact that you have to learn your track really, really quickly in about 3 performances. Um, but you also don't just like, I can't just go take the run sheet and do the show. I have to also understand everything else that happens in the show. In case something stops, I'm on the deck, you know, and I have to figure out how to work through any problems that can arise. So you have to also understand all of those mechanics that happen with the shows. Lion King specifically, I started on the tour. I started right after Piazza, a couple of weeks after I finally recuperated and started answering phone calls.
Very good.
And I went home. I think I packed a bag, and then I got on the train to Philadelphia and started learning the Lion King.
Wow.
And it literally was 3 days to learn one of the deck tracks, and then another 3 days to learn stage right. I think I started on stage left. And with Lion King Tour, that's pretty much it. It's a 2-deck stage management track. When I got about a couple of months in, sometime in November, I got a call being like, we would like you to sub in New York on the Lion King. So I was like, great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the same kind of track. So the same kind of, I was thinking I'd walk in and everything would be the same, with little tricks to it. And nope, they call things differently. They, they call props different, and I was like, what the hell, what are they talking about? So, and there's also a basement track because Pride Rock comes from the basement. There's elevators that you, as a stage manager, ride up on sometimes.
Cool.
Oh yeah, that's fun. Talk about hazard pay. And then the Minskoff is so big. And it's just huge. It has big wings. It's got, it's hard to get to front of house, or it's long to get to front of house. So it's just that. So it wasn't the same show that I used to know.
Yeah.
When I picked up this Steve Martin tour, Martin Short tour, about 4 years ago. And what I was told was it was just going to be a 1-day thing, that they wanted somebody to come in. I was living in Connecticut at the time. And this is a lesson on being nice to your crew.
Yes.
Because the light board op at Westport Country Playhouse, Bob McDevitt, actually got me the job. He recommended me. And they said, he goes, do you want to work on this? And I was like, well, it's Steve Martin and Martin Short, sure.
Oh yeah.
And so I talked with, it was through the union, because they didn't, normally Steve and Marty they traveled with a main tour manager, but they wanted somebody who could deal with the crew, but also with Steve and Marty. Much like a stage manager, but they could call it a tour management gig.
Sure.
But they wanted somebody who dealt with stars, and this theater that in Connecticut felt like they didn't have anybody in the union that could actually do that. Or in their local that could do that. So I talked with their union chief, and they said, have you dealt with stars before? I said, yes, I've dealt with,
yes,
a bunch of people. I talked with the tour's production manager and the tour manager as well, and they just kind of gave me the rundown of what I was going to do. They sent me a video of the show, and then I got there that day, and I met the guys, and they were great. And I just did what I did. If they needed something, I went and got it. If they needed them, I treated them like they were people. And I don't know what prompted them to say, we want him to join us on the road, but something I did that day sparked that. So they asked if I would be willing to, or the tour manager, the main tour manager asked if I'd be willing to be interested in joining, if I'd ever done anything like this. I said, well, I did, 6 months on Lion King tour.
Yeah.
But I said to them, I've never done anything like one-nighters, which is what they were doing. And he goes, well, we'll have 20 dates in 2015 that we want you to join us for. And I said, well, if I know them now, I can make sure that my schedule fits. Like, I can figure out what shows I need to do around them. I can ask for time off, like a weekend off here and there. And I thought I'd never hear from them again.
Mm-hmm.
And then it literally January 4th, the tour manager called and goes, here are the 20 dates. And 20 dates in 2016 turned into, 40 dates in 2017, turned into 80 dates in 2019 on top of a Netflix show.
Yeah.
And then now 2019, we went to Australia.
Oh.
So yeah, it's been a really busy run. And I would say for anybody who's interested in touring is, you have to realize that you're always going to be with the people that you work with.
Yeah.
And you have to, find moments for yourself.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
You can't always be with them.
Yeah. Well, and also branching off of that, like, I've worked for, a touring company before, and they keep a lot of the same teams of people together because you always are going to be with those people. So finding a team that fits for you is really important to consider before accepting a tour. Because if I don't want to get dinner with those people before,
absolutely,
I'm not going to want to live with them.
Yes.
And stuff.
Yep.
Something you touched on, I want to move away from touring a little bit, but that you mentioned was your time in Connecticut and at Westport Country Playhouse.
Yes.
And something that I love about your career, Matthew, is that you have a really good understanding of the production contract in Broadway, but you also have a really great understanding of what it means to be a regional PSM and to be a resident. So what is that world like? And what are the, differences of working at one institution and doing multiple shows there versus working kind of as a free agent in New York?
Yeah. I started in Westport in 2008. Not officially as a resident stage manager. I didn't apply to be a resident stage manager at the theater. It just grew to that. And the artistic director at the time, there was a co-artistic directors at the time, Annie Keefe, who was a former stage manager, and Joanne Woodward, the actress. And Joanne and Paul Newman, her husband, spent all of this money in like 2005 and raised all this money to renovate Westport Country Playhouse. So I believe I got the date right of the renovation, but sorry, Westport, if I didn't. So Annie called me and she goes, I'm looking for PSM for this show. And you come really recommended from my friends Frank Lombardi and Diane DeVita. Would you be interested? And she goes, if you're friends with them and you've worked with them, then that's good for me. So I took the job. I wanted to start expanding my PSM credits. I hadn't had many at the time, so I knew that was the goal for me, that I didn't want to stay in ASM for the rest of my time. I would have been happy, but I knew that I wanted to grow a little bit more.
Yeah.
So Westport, the show at Westport was small. It was 3 cast members. It was directed by their artistic director, their associate artistic director, excuse me, who had never directed a production there before. So they were giving him an opportunity and then they were letting him free.
Yeah.
And so I went up and did it, and I thought, okay, this is fun. And I enjoyed it. I felt kind of natural being, in that leadership role. I got to try things, and then, through the years, my time there grew. One show, then the next season turned into 2 shows. Then Mark Lamos, who I had now worked with in New York City as a PSM, he was becoming the artistic director there. So it kind of just was natural that I stayed there. And then 2 shows turned into 3 shows, into 4 shows, into 5-show resident stage manager, spending
Jeez.
all of my time on Metro North trains, going back and forth between rehearsals and performances. But what it gave me was a chance to, again, find my style, to experiment. It was a playground for me. It was, I'm not going to say that it was relatively simple shows. There were a lot of, ins and outs, but, it gave me a chance to be like, oh, I can try it this way. I can, continue, writing reports, and figuring out how I want to write reports and write summaries.
Which, if Matthew would be willing to share one of his reports, I'll link it in the description below. But this man can write a report, friends.
I work hard
That
on
is,
them.
he very diligently. Every word, every period, every comma, everything matters in your reports, and it's really beautiful to read.
Thank you. I got that from Roy Harris, actually, because he would show reports, and his were very much very vivid descriptions of the day. And so I took off of that, and I remember him doing that. And what I wanted to do was connect to the box office people. I wanted to connect to everybody who was working, for the show in the offices. And that's kind of a really, passion for me, is to make sure that I'm bringing them into the process of what we're figuring out in the room, in the rehearsal room, and then what we're doing on stage. So it is, it's a really key for me to write a nice summary like that. But that's what it gave me. And then when I became the resident, that was a whole different experience, because now, not just being their PSM, I was now invited into their staff meetings. And so that was another and I would have to give a report. We go around the circle, and each department, I was in the department of myself, would
department of one.
Exactly, would have to give a update. And so I was given that kind of trust and that support, and so I was ultimately a part of the success of the theater in that way. I never let it. It's interesting, because sometimes when you think resident stage manager, people might think oh, you're beholden to the theater, and you're doing things just for theater. But I never let it I never let that seep in for me. I never was oh, the theater's God, and any issue that comes against them is not, if an actor came up with an issue about their travel, then they have a valid issue, and you have to deal with it. And I have to be the voice for that as the stage manager, beholden to the union and, and the acting company as an eyes and ears of that. I can't just sit there and be we're going to not do breaks because, the artistic director says we're not going to do breaks. And so it's a role that I took seriously, because I liked, being with those people, but I also liked, that they trusted me enough to continue doing, being the PSM, how I'm supposed to be a PSM.
Yeah. Wow.
That made sense.
No, it definitely does. And that those lines do get blurred when you become a staff member of a company, but you are a union member working on a production. You are contracted for the production. So
and first and foremost, you have to follow your union. So.
Exactly. I want to kind of transition into the point of time where I met you, which is when you came down to North Carolina to teach SM1. It was
I turned right around and came back.
And you said bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
When did you become interested in the concept of teaching stage management? Was that something you were interested in for a long time? And then why University of North Carolina School of the Arts?
So the teaching, let's talk about that. So I found the other day this quote by Oprah. You know her, that little
Never heard of her.
I know. You really should do some Chicago history lesson.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
you're
go
just
down
failing.
to Water Tower Place.
You missed Piazza at the Goodman, and you don't know who Oprah is. And I'm really questioning that you live there. So
Me too.
and I'm gonna read this because I wrote it down. So, because I would mess it up, and I don't want to mess up her her quote.
Please, we
So
respect Oprah on this
that's
podcast.
right. So she writes, "Your legacy is every life that you've touched. It's how you use your life to be a light to somebody else." And I love that quote
Yeah.
because, like, I think that's teaching in a nutshell. And you know, I've always been captivated by teaching. I've had such good mentors throughout my career. Um, Everybody I've ever worked with, as I've said before. Um, but you meet as a PSM, you meet stage management interns, you meet production assistants, and I've always had this sense and this nature to give back to them. To paraphrase John Kennedy, the torch has been passed.
Yeah.
And that's what I do think this business is about, or at least my place in this business is about, is like I'm passing what I know on to the next generation of stage managers. I'm not going to be saying go till I'm 105.
Yeah.
I probably won't be alive at 105, but I want that new generation of stage managers to um, take what they've experienced from working with me and grow into their own stage manager. So the formal teaching that you speak of
Yes.
didn't really start until about uh, 2014, because I never thought that I could, a job that was so in my body, I never thought I could explain to
Yeah.
somebody else. I always was, the person of like, oh, let's just observe this, just observe me, and then or here's a little bit of tidbit. But to sit there for an hour and a half class, and, sometimes that's what I did. So, you were in some classes, come on, where I just couldn't explain it because it was
We would,
so,
yeah.
it was hard. It's hard to sit there and think of a job that is in a way subjective, and it's based on the person, and really you know um, put it into a lesson. So I'm slowly through the years figuring it out
Yeah.
a little bit more concretely,
Yeah.
but the discussion is with younger stage managers is always interesting. But in 2014, my friend Frank Lombardi called me, and he goes, "So, would you be interested in coming to North Carolina?" He was teaching there at the time. He was the head of the stage manager program.
I can confirm all
Um,
of this.
Thank you. No lying thing. No fact checks, please. Um, so he's like, "I'm looking for a guest artist to come and join me for either the fall semester or the spring semester. So one of the other." And so I moved some things around. I, dropped out of a show, and I said to Frank, I can be down in September. And what we were going to do was we were going to co-teach together. So Frank would be in some classes, and I, I would, Frank would be the primary teacher teaching the lesson, and I would throw in my words of wisdom. And then I would advise some shows, which was the fun part, sitting in tech, although if I stayed awake.
Yeah.
So,
You said it.
that's right. No, I will totally. But giving notes and feedback to students, was always the more interesting part of the job for
Yeah.
me at that time. And so, I started there in September, and then probably like 3 weeks in, Frank asked me if I wanted to stay on for the second semester, the spring semester. So I said, sure, I've got nothing else to do. So I stayed for the second semester. I then continued that path. I think I actually got a class to teach officially, which then bumped me to an adjunct status. And it was all great. It was kind of the same thing. Seeing the passion of these students was very infectious, especially, how everybody down in North Carolina worked. There's such workhorses, and it's a school that really is like a little professional theater company. And it was great to see how skilled everybody was, and how advanced the technology they were working with was, and how open everybody was to just jumping in and doing things. So that was infectious.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Tell me, my last question I want to ask you before we get to our production story is
mhm.
about this Encores that you've mentioned a couple times and we've
Okay.
foreshadowed. What is the City Center Encores program? And what is kind of the process and timeline of doing a production there?
Hmm.
And then, like, you've worked there multiple times over the years, and I've seen one of them. Do I hear a waltz? Yes, I do. How have these productions, though, grown from kind of more book in hand stagings with some blocking to more fully realized theatrical productions?
Hmm. So for those of you who don't know what City Center Encores is in a nutshell, City Center Encores is a celebration of the forgotten musical.
Yes.
Um, and probably the most popular Encores production at the moment is Chicago. So Chicago, the revival of Chicago, which is now have been running for I don't know how
Broadway
many
sure
years.
thing.
Broadway's your thing. It
Yes.
started out as a City Center Encores.
Yeah.
So that kind of very simple production, band on stage, stark, work, the gold
Yeah.
is all Encores look and feel to it.
Yeah.
You have about 2 weeks to put up a full musical. Yes.
I'm stressed just
So,
thinking
and
about it.
I say almost 2 weeks because you'll start with 8 members of the company in what they call early days for 2 days. So on a Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll start you'll start what you call early days, and you can call any 8 cast members, so any leads, any dancers, whatever, but you have to use the same 8 people each day.
Sure.
Then on Thursday, you start with a full company and you do the whole thing. Hi, I'm Matthew. I've done X amount of encores and I'm this, and you go all around the room. From that moment on, you are shot out of a cannon to do this musical, to figure this out, to stage it, and I'm talking staging, I'm talking full dance numbers, some even ballets, till by the next Thursday, you're doing a designer run through for the designers. And that is the only chance they're going to be able to see this show until it's in theater and tech. Because the next day, Friday, is a Zitz probe, and then you're on stage, and you're teching the show. So it's busy. And you've got, it's a musical that is, the full original orchestration is used. So it's 30 members of a band of an orchestra that are on stage with you. It is 30 to 35 cast members. And these shows it's not like I'm doing MAME. These are shows that have been like in the bottom of the trunk for a really long time. I've done 6 of them. 3 or 4 official encores, which are the bigger shows, and then they have a summer series, which is devoted or has been devoted for more off-Broadway shows, musicals. So so it's busy. You're busy all the time, and you have to, just keep moving with it. And if you think about the timeline, you're already behind. So, it is. It's like, and it's crazy. And but my time on it has always kind of been that nature of pretty close to fully realized productions. We're not going to get into automation with an encores, and it's gone through, we can have book in hand and a concert staging style with microphones at the front of to now, fully microphones in hair for everyone, we're doing a production. So,
Yeah.
and where the book in hand comes in is it started out as a concert, way back. Sorry, Jack Vertel, I can't remember when it started. But if you actually, it's very interesting. If you follow City Center on Instagram, since the pandemic and everything shut down, they've been doing on archives. So you'll see clips from earlier encores that have, Tyne Daly holding her book.
Yeah.
And then, but my time during encores has always been, oh, we're going to suggest, you have the book in hand. But all the actors want to be off book now. But now it's come to a different contract negotiation where it's now, if the actor wants to hold the book, they can,
Totally.
nobody can tell them no. So, and that's how it's been. So for all the encores that I had, but if you're doing a whole dance, break, you can't hold the book.
Yeah.
You've got all props. It's hard to hold books.
Yeah.
But again, fully realized, I think Melissa Errico and Do I Hear a Waltz did 9 costume changes.
Yeah. She couldn't stop.
And I was with her a lot of the time, because I was the ASM that was dealing with costumes a lot. And then, for Love Life, Kate Baldwin and Brian Stokes Mitchell each had maybe 10 costume changes.
Wow.
So every scene they kept changing costumes too.
Yeah.
So it's busy, and we did that with them. So, or we were attempting to do it. We were mapping it out to do it with them. So it's kind of crazy.
And you will do it one day. I feel in my heart that
I hope so. It'd be nice to actually get it done. We got to the last day in the rehearsal room, which was the designer run, and we were told right before we were doing the designer run that we weren't going to do it next week. We weren't going to perform next week, and that today was the last day of our time together. So we wound up doing the designer run anyway because we felt we should. And then I turned to the team and I was like, oh crap, we have to strike. We have to pull up on tape. I wasn't prepared for this. So and we're like, no.
Oh man.
I know.
Wow. Well, I mean, what a fitting place though, the city center.
Very rewarding.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So the full circle, I'll tell you this, in City Center is their City Center is a huge building that has like 9 floors, and the administrative offices and where the stage manager's office is like the 9th and the 7th floor. And when I went back to work on Encores with Adam John Hunter and Christine Demore, I went up to the 9th floor my first day of work, and I noticed that it had a mural of the front facade of City Center. And in the corner was a poster of one of the shows that was, when this facade was, this mural was painted. And it was my first show that I ever did at Manhattan Theater Club. And I was like, that's this business for me. That history of this business, that connection, that cosmic, weird connection that we have, to theaters, to people, is just so interesting, in life and in this business. And I don't think you ever get it anywhere else, or I don't think I would feel it the same as I would, working in a 9-to-5 office sometimes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful, I have chills again. My heart just bursts. Matthew, I could talk to you all day, as we have established. And I do want to wrap up the podcast asking for a production story. What is your funniest, scariest, most intense, any superlative story from a production that you would like to share with the podcast?
Well, my my story kind of goes through many different shows. I have a tendency, guilty, to be a little bit of a practical joker on shows. So I like to have fun. I do. I like to have fun.
Sue me.
We're not doing brain surgery, so we can laugh. The kind of thing that I've done a lot is that I've started putting phrases in people's calling scripts.
I can't stand you.
I did it at first.
Keep going.
I did it at first with when I taught Christine Demore to call. She was working with me at Westport, and it was a day that I was going to be in rehearsal in New York while she was calling the matinee. So I was like, oh, what can I do? What can I do? So in her book, I started putting all the faces of all of these actors that either problem actors or people that gave us trouble throughout the several shows that we've done. So that when she would turn the page, there would be this person popping up. And I've done that a couple of times with people. And maybe even you. So.
Maybe before you get off this call, I'm gonna see if I have my binder, and I have those Post-its somewhere. I will find them.
But like I do it, I respectfully, it's not a busy section. I really try to make sure that I'm not doing anything that's gonna really like throw somebody. But like those faces that I put in Christine's book found us through even to this day. Like I remember being in North Carolina and like opening up a drawer in my house, and there was a picture of and I'm like, oh, and it's because she planted it there. Or like, it's, I'll be reading a book and then all of a sudden it pops into my, this piece of paper falls out and I'm like, what's this? Oh, it's another actor. and so then I take those and I go to her house and I hide them throughout her, her place. So we have this constant thing going. So
thank you for being so gracious and
My
sharing
pleasure.
all of your experiences with me. I really, really appreciate it.
This has been great. It's been fun. It's like, this is your life. And so it's been nice strolling down memory lane with you.
With that, we have come to the end of episode 10 of the Stage Manager Supply Co. podcast. Once again, brought to you by Spellcheck. Spellcheck, keeping me on track since 1995. A huge thank you to Matthew for sharing his experiences with me, and a huge thanks to you for listening. I'm still on my quest to become the Howard Stern of arts education, and one day I too hope to have a studio and co-hosts. But for now, just me. Again, if you would like to signal boost or support God's Love We Deliver, their website will be linked in the episode notes. If you enjoyed the podcast, please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe to us on your chosen podcast platform. Thank you again for listening, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye!